1986, when a short-lived revolution was smashed by Soviet tanks. Since then, Hungary has felt the strong grip of Russian strongmen such as Khrushchev and Brezhnev. A revolution of sorts is underway to end the single-team domination of Formula One. But the road is fraught with many obstacles, and few have succeeded in reaching the top. And while relations between East and West have begun to thaw, even the most progressive Hungarian couldn't have guessed what lay in store in 1986 when the new Hungaroring first hosted that most capitalistic of entertainments, Formula One. In the land of the collective, a Brazilian millionaire drove a British race car powered by a Japanese engine to the first World Championship checkered flag ever to wave behind the Iron Curtain. Ah, they must have thought, what curious things this freedom can bring. Just outside the Hungarian capital of Budapest is the town of Magyarország, not perhaps synonymous with the glamour of Rio de Janeiro or Monaco, but there is no more important city in all of motorsports today, for Magyarország is the home of the Hungaroring and the site of the Formula One Grand Prix of Hungary. Hello, everyone. I'm Bob Barsha, welcoming you to Magyar, as the Hungarians know their country, and their hospitality has been both deep and warm over the past few days, and we are very grateful for that. Behind me, a crowd expected to swell to some 300,000, easily the biggest we've seen all year here on ESPN, and they are not all Hungarians. The borders are open. There are Italians, Austrians, even the English in the crowd, following their heroes on the Formula One World Championship trail. And speaking of Englishmen, with me to call the action in today's Hungarian Grand Prix, our old friend David Hobbs. And David, this crowd has already been entertained by a big surprise in qualifying.
Well, that's true, Bob. They certainly have. For the first time in 18 races, in fact, the British Grand Prix last year, a McLaren is not on the pole. Today, that honor falls to Riccardo Patrese in the Renault-engined Williams car. However, right alongside them, of course, no surprise at all, is Ayrton Senna. But another surprise right behind them is Alex Caffey in the Dallara, demonstrating yet again how incredibly competitive Formula One racing is. 2 weeks ago in Germany, he couldn't even get through pre-qualifying. Today, he's third on the grid. And all the elements are there to make this one of the most, if not the most exciting race of the 1989 season. But don't just take my word for it. Listen to what the man himself has to say.
I think that, yeah, definitely we are going to see a very tough race and very open race. 77 laps of a track where you never have a moment to breathe, to relax. And it's going to be tough for the cars, for the drivers. And on top of that, I think there are cars that they are very equal on performance, so it can be a very interesting race to do and to watch.
But that notwithstanding, today's race is going to be very, very tactical. And with more of the elements of those tactics, let's go down to John Bisignano in the pits. John?
Thank you very much, David. And actually, we have moved out of the pit lane back to the paddock so that we could show you some of the tactical elements that are going to come into very heavy use during this Hungarian Grand Prix. Number one, our old friend, the tires. Now, every driver with his team manager, they are in this paddock right now trying to find out or decide which is the best setup to go with. To go with the soft C tire that gives you more grip out on the circuit, but it's going to make you come in for a pit stop. They won't go the whole distance. Or to go with a harder B tire, therefore give up some grip, a little slipping and sliding, but you will be able to go the distance without a stop. That's a very big choice here in Hungary. Second of all, fuel. These cars are maxed out on fuel. They put every drop of fuel possible into these chassis, and the drivers still don't know if they have enough juice to go the whole distance. They're going to have to manage this fuel throughout the race when the competition will allow. The third thing they're going to have to manage, that's their own strength. This is one of the most demanding circuits as far as driving conditioning goes on the whole Grand Prix Championship trail. All the up and down hills and these many corners, all the G-forces take a lot of strength out of the drivers. They're going to have to manage their own strength throughout the Grand Prix again when competition will allow. Well, factor number 4 that no one can manage, the weather. Friday, Saturday practice has been absolutely warm, clear, and dry, and here we are only moments before the Hungarian Grand Prix, and it's sprinkling now with forecasted heavy rains. All of that adds up to one very interesting and exciting Grand Prix of Hungary.
Thank you, John. The Hungaroring, built in 1986 to accommodate Formula One racing and the only circuit of its kind behind the Iron Curtain. Although we understand a new circuit may be coming in the Formula One Grand Prix of Hungary. Stay with us. Hungary, where we're preparing for the command to fire engines for the Hungarian Grand Prix. Let's give you the weather. And as John mentioned, it's an iffy proposition. Temperature high at 78 degrees. The humidity makes it feel a lot worse. The wind is blowing straight up the front straightaway, but only about 5 miles an hour, so it shouldn't have an impact on the drivers. The forecast, though, is for clouds with a 50% chance of rain, decreasing throughout the afternoon, but we have some thunderclouds on the horizon moving in this direction, and so we'll have to keep a close eye on the weather here in Hungary as the race goes on. Now let's take a look at the way the field will line up for this fourth running of the Hungarian Grand Prix. As David mentioned, on the pole for the first time since 1983 in the Italian Grand Prix at Monza, Riccardo Patrese in the Williams Renault at an average speed of about 111 miles an hour. 0.3 of a second behind Ayrton Senna, the defending world champion, and the first time in 18 races that a McLaren Honda has not sat on the pole. In the second row will be Alex Caffey, the revelation of Italy, and the Dallara Ford, 0.9 seconds back. Next to him will be Terry Boutsen of Belgium in the second team Williams Renault, 1.2 seconds off the pole. On row 3 will be Alain Prost of France in the second McLaren Honda, the third time this year he's been that far back. Next to him will be Gerhard Berger of Austria in the Ferrari, 1.5 seconds off Patresi's time. On row 4 will be Sandro Nannini of Italy in the Benetton Ford, 1.575 seconds off. Next to him will be fellow Italian Stefano Modena doing well for Brabham, 1.746 seconds off. Row 5 will be Derek Warwick of Great Britain with a great qualifying run in the USF&G Arrows. He'll be 1.89 seconds behind the pole. And next to him, another of the 10 Italian drivers in this race, Pierluigi Martini in the Minardi Ford, a full 2 seconds adrift of the pole position. Further back in the field, youth has served Jean Alesi of France with the second team Tyrrell. Next to him will be Nigel Mansell, not used to seeing old Nige that far back, from Great Britain in the number 2 Ferrari, the fastest man in warm-up. He may be someone to watch. On row 7, Maurizio Gugelmin of Brazil, along with his March Judd teammate Ivan Capelli of Italy. Row 8 will be Martin Brundle of Great Britain in the second Brabham, alongside Eddie Cheever of the United States in the second Arrows Ford. Row 9 will be Nelson Piquet of Brazil in the Lotus with Judd Power next to Andrea De Cesaris of Italy in the second team Dallara. Row 10 will be Jonathan Palmer of Great Britain. After a big crash on Friday, the Tyrrell Ford has been repaired, and he is there. Next to him will be Japanese driver Satoru Nakajima in the second team Lotus Judd. Row 11 will be Bertrand Gachot of Belgium in the Onyx, next to Piercarlo Genzani of Italy in the Osella. Row 12, Luis Sala of Spain in the second team Minardi Ford, next to Stefan Johansson of Sweden in the second Onyx Ford. And the final row, Emmanuel Pirot of Italy in the Benetton with Ford Power, and a full 4 seconds off the pole. Michele Alboreto of Italy in the Lola Lamborghini for the second straight race, just squeaking into the field for the Hungarian Grand Prix. The course is described as rather like Monaco without the houses, and a very challenging course it is. Those who did not make the cut, René Arnoux and Olivier Griard with the Ligets, and the Real teammates Christian Danner and Volker Wiedler, both of whom, it was announced here in Hungary, will be replaced next year. As I mentioned, the course is very, very difficult, very twisty, with a lot of geography. David Hobbs has taken a close look at the course, and here is a presentation.
There you see the Hungaroring, 2.46 miles and 17 turns, and a medium-speed course, about 110 miles an hour being the pole. Let's go for a lap now with Nelson Piquet and his Lotus as he crosses the line in 6th gear at about 150 miles an hour, hard on the brakes to turn 1, which he'll take in 4th gear. Downhill corner, all the way around, still going downhill, accelerates. Snatches 5th there, but back to 3rd for the second corner. Again, still going downhill. Slow, hangs in tight there, up to 4th. Now to 5th, this very fast sweeper, flashes by one of the Minardis there, and up to 6th again, as he approaches the next left-hander with a right-hand approach to it. Flicks through there left in 4th. Down to 3rd with this long, long right-hander. Very tough on the left front tyre this corner. Up to 5th. Now to the chicane, hard on the brakes, down to 3rd. Right, left, sweep there, keeping clear those curbs. Up to 4th, back to 3rd. Up to 4th again. Low rev through this corner. Accelerates now up to 5th. Very quick left-hand sweep here. As as you can see, very, very difficult to overtake anybody in the race, this course, because the course moves all the time. A right, left flick. Everywhere you go, you'll face a little bit of a flick like this right-hander before this long left-hander, which they take in third. He'll just take fourth on exit, hang on to fourth for this long, long last corner as he comes out into the pit straight. But as I say, it's very, very difficult to pass here, so good grid position is essential. And there we've crossed the line, and again, about 150 miles an hour with Nelson Piquet on Friday afternoon.
Thank you, David. And more to the point of those curbs, here at the Hungaroring, we have curbing as high as anywhere in Formula One. And to give you an idea of what can happen when you don't respect those curbs, recall 2 weeks ago in Germany when Gerhard Berger's Ferrari lost a tire and launched him over the curb.
Well, the reason it lost the tire was previous to that, he and Mansell had both been abusing those curbs, and he had bent the left rear rim, the tire had gone flat, and of course he arrived there totally out of control.
Now, let's give you a view of the accident from Gerhard Berger's seat that wasn't available to us 2 weeks ago. Watch and listen. That is a major crash, and of course, in Gerhard Berger's case, the second of his season in Formula One. David, I gotta wonder whether Gerhard Berger hears people coming up behind him.
I don't know, he's giving a rueful look there.
In slow motion, you see Berger trying to steer, and by this time, it is just lost. Bodywork flies everywhere, and our thanks to the Formula One Constructors Association, who made this replay available to us. Quite a beating taken by the onboard camera, as well as Gerhard Berger's Ferrari. Let's go down to John Bizignano now for his last thoughts before the green light.
Well, we are right down on the grid here just before the start of the Hungarian Grand Prix, and there are quite a few updates. We'll do them very quickly. Pirro in the Benetton, he had a fire during warm-up. He is in the spare car, as is Capelli, who crashed quite heavily. He is in the spare March. Also, Boutsen, a bit of a disappointment there. His alternator was bad. They had put him in the spare Williams. He's not looking forward to driving a car in this race that he is not familiar with all weekend long. The McLarens, they had fuel pickup problems with their race engines. They had 4 hours to change those race engines. After the warm-up, they decided to leave them in. They took several warm-up laps, but they really don't know if the problem is totally solved once the engines get very, very warm. That could be a real disappointment for them. Ferrari, Nigel Mansell managed to only qualify 12th due to very heavy handling problems. He says that is cured, but remember, in the warm-up, he was on full tank, so his handling bugs could come back once the car goes light. Tires, we said just a moment ago that it's a big choice, and Riccardo Patrese on pole position actually has a set of C's on the car right now and a stack of B's next to him. He can't make up his mind with only seconds to go.
All right, thanks, John. We expect plenty of action in that hard downhill first corner here at the Hungarian Grand Prix. We'll take a quick time out and come back, and we'll give you a look at our pick six. I understand that, in fact, John did quite well while Bob Jenkins was standing in for me at Germany, so John is leading the competition, and we'll take it no farther. I picked Patrese to win, David picks Ayrton Senna to win, and John picks Alain Prost to win. We'll be back to Hungary. Ring with an estimated 300,000 fans in attendance, and we are growing very close to the start of the Formula One Grand Prix of Hungary. Good reason why there are so many people here as you watch the cars make their way to their places on the grid. Tickets run as little as $2 for children and only $60 for a perfect grandstand seat on the front straightaway. So even though the per capita income here in Hungary is only about $7,200 a year, the ticket prices for the Hungarian Grand Prix are quite reasonable. The car is now pulling to a stop, and of course, when they do, they'll be put under starters' orders. Riccardo Patrese is on the pole, and we anticipate a drag race between he and Ayrton Senna of Brazil to the first turn. Patrese, a notoriously difficult man to pass, he is very much in the catbird seat here in Hungary. Quickly, the revolutions come up, and Patrese makes a great start. Behind him, Alex Caffey threatens Ayrton Senna as they come down the front straightaway and make their way toward turn one. It is Patrese now. Here comes Senna along the inside. And we've suddenly had a problem with our Hungarian television feed. We'll bring you the leaders as soon as we can. Looks like Patrese did manage to hold it through the first two turns, followed by Ayrton Senna and Alex Caffey.
Alex Caffey making a great start there, and of course he's had a very strong weekend so far, and obviously want to maintain that today.
One of the things that struck me about this race course is the topography, the fact that they do a lot of climbing and ascending. It looked very flat in previous editions on TV, but believe me, there is a lot of climbing and ascending to do on this racetrack.
Most of the corners are quite difficult because they are on the top of little brows or just at the bottom, and it makes them difficult to sight.
We are not able to see the cars right now from our position because of a breakup on our television feed, but as soon as they come by the start-finish line, we will be bringing you updated leaderboards. A terrific start for Riccardo Patrese, and as I mentioned, not an easy man to pass in that Williams Renault, and so we anticipate a great battle between he and the McLaren of Ayrton Senna here in Hungary.
Well, he's not an easy man to pass, and this is a particularly bad circuit to pass on, too, because the road moves around the whole time. And there you can see he's got quite a substantial lead over Senna, who's in turn being followed by Caffi, and right behind Caffi is one of the Ferraris, I suspect, Berger.
Across the line they come. Patrese, Senna, Caffi, Gerhard Berger, Alain Prost, Terry Boutsen, Sandro Nannini, Nigel Mansell, Derek Warwick.
Nigel Mansell, of course, started back in 12th spot, had a very bad practice and qualifying, but went very, very well this morning in warm-up.
We anticipate seeing Nigel Mansell make his way through the field. Patrese is your leader. Now you're looking through the in-car camera of Nelson Piquet.
Right behind one of the USF&G cars there.
There you see the lead enjoyed at this point by Riccardo Patrese.
As they swoop through the Hungarian countryside, and there you see the huge crowd assembled above the chicane, out exactly diametrically opposed to us, right across the other side of the track.
Riccardo Patrese seeking career victory number 3 in Formula One competition, and even the 2 that he has, David, have been tainted to some degree.
They were a little bit, and of course he was very unlucky actually not to win Montreal this year, because he led most of the time in the rain, but his under tray came loose, he lost a lot of his ground effect, and his teammate Thierry Boutsen went on to win. But really I feel that Patrese should have won that race. Ayrton Senna making a move on him now, catching up, closing that gap as they come up to the last corner. There's the pit entry on the right there. And Ayrton Senna is making ground on Riccardo Patrese.
And not only is this enormous crowd in Hungary huge, it is enthusiastic. They come to their feet as one, as Riccardo Patrese of Italy leads Ayrton Senna of Brazil down into turn 1. You see the gap back to Alex Caffi in 3rd and Gerhard Berger in 4th. The first lap turned at about 1:31 seconds as compared to the qualifying time of Riccardo Patrese at 1:19.726.
Now, both these lead cars, of course, are multi-cylinder cars. They've both got V10s, which is the route that Honda and Renault decided to go. Ferrari, of course, have gone with a 12. That's one of the Lotuses in.
No, that's Giannalisi in the Tyrrell.
It is, too.
You note the camel livery on the back of those cars makes them very difficult to distinguish from the Lotuses, which are entirely in camel yellow.
Disappointing for Alesi, because he qualified jolly well. He qualified in 11th spot.
Look at that hillside of fans all the way around this racetrack at 2.4 miles. The fans are literally hundreds deep, and it is a great spectator course. You can see virtually 2/3 of the course from just about anywhere around it.
But these shots show why it's so difficult to overtake, too. The road moves all the time, and it's very easy for the driver who's in the lead to take a line and make it extremely difficult for anybody to pass him.
Patrese is your leader after 2 laps of the Hungarian Grand Prix. Ayrton Senna in pursuit, followed by Alex Caffi, Gerhard Berger, Alain Prost, Terry Boutsen, Sandro Nannini, Nigel Mansell, Derek Warwick, and Ivan Capelli. Track Facts are brought to you by USF&G Asset Management, a network to better manage money, people, property, and equipment.
The prevention of fire is still a major safety concern in Formula One. In a heavy accident, this entire engine could be broken away from the chassis. Now, in the old days, that would result in fuel being spilled everywhere into a very dangerous environment, usually ending up in a huge flame. Well, the Minardi team and all the other Formula One teams have installed a very high-pressure dry brake type valve between the fuel tank and the motor. This valve will close instantaneously if there's any type of rupture between the engine bay and the chassis. It keeps all the fuel where it belongs safely in the rubber tank. In Formula One, the very big job of fire safety can come down to a very small piece of equipment.
Back at Hungary, Pierluigi Martini pits his Minardi with a fire at the right rear corner. Somebody get on that. As you can see, the pit personnel in Formula One are not exactly dressed for firefighting.
No, it's pretty astounding the way that everybody's allowed to walk around in shorts and shirt. I mean, when you think of in the America now, pretty well all forms of racing from IMSA. There you see the Minardi.
Looks like maybe
by that's Molina passing him and Stefan
Johansson in the Onyx. Looks like maybe an oil line came loose or something. He pitted with the fire, and it looks like Martini, who was running in 13th position at the time, might well be done for the day. Meanwhile, this is the battle for the lead in the Hungarian Grand Prix. Ricardo Patrese being followed by Ayrton Senna, Gerhard Berger, the man you just got a good close look at in the bright red Ferrari, and Alain Prost.
So now we've had a slight change in fortune here because Patrese had pulled away, but now the others have hauled him slowly but surely in. And as you can see, he's only got a lead of half a second now. And of course, virtually no gap between Senna and Berger, and very little gap back to Alain Prost.
As far as Patrese may be losing a little bit of ground here, he said to us at the beginning of this weekend that he was making up his time on brakes, David, and it would be just about here where those brakes started to fail. His screeching qualifying time in the 19s, he said he got the time on the brakes.
Well, he may be looking after his brakes. Of course, they have these cars are made. The brakes don't need changing like a long-distance car, but on the other hand, if you really cane them, and they do get used extremely hard here. That looked like Ginzani they were going around.
Yeah, Ginzani and the Osella.
They do get used pretty hard. They get a real good pasting at the end of this straight for a start.
Watch for the telltale sign of brake fade, locking up wheels and having trouble keeping the car on the pavement.
Senna hauling him in. Back this lot really having a tremendous race together, but extremely difficult for any one of these guys to overtake the other.
The McLarens have been using, or trying at least, a new air box here, getting rid of the big hoop above the driver's head and bringing the air in from the sides of the driver's head. There you watch Cappy once again leading the train. That includes Nigel Mansell, Terry Boutsen, Derek Warwick. Back up front one more time. Patrese in the blue, yellow, and white Williams car, followed by the red and white Marlboro McLaren of Ayrton Senna. There's Ginzani in the pits. Let's hear John.
Ginzani came in. He had a very bad misfire. They have just grabbed one of the block boxes, and they're trying to get the engine cover off. The Osella team does not have a lot of experience at this, either taking the engine cover off or really racing, but right now they are racing hard to change the electrics on the Ginzani machine.
Tough race. This is the first Formula One Grand Prix that Piercarlo Ginzani has made this year. Longtime driver for Osella, though he spent a brief tour of duty, I believe, with the Zaxby team before coming back to Osella.
He also, of course, he's one of the guys who's very, very rarely even got through the pre-qualifying, let alone the qualifying for the race itself. So he did a very good job on a Friday afternoon, got himself into the race, but doesn't look as if it's done him much good in the long run. Alain Prost having a bit of a run at Gerhard Berger. No, not that time. Have to wait for another lap. Like I say, the one real place is there to overtake, and they really got to get the last corner before the straight right to really set the enemy up. Got to set him up.
Let's hear more about the Martini situation, that fire in the pits from John.
The wheel problem, or the fire you saw with the Minardi, was the fact that he had lost a right wheel bearing. The whole thing was seized up, a lot of fire, and the grease in the wheel bearing actually was causing the blaze.
Next, John, we're watching a replay of Alex Caffey taking a shot at Nigel Mansell. There is Terry Boutsen, who pitted while John was talking about the Minardi. He has obviously gone for a new set of tires, and so he will re-enter the racetrack having sacrificed substantial time. He was running in 7th position when he pitted. Boutsen will now have a lot of ground to make up here in Hungary. Music is everywhere in the city of Budapest, Hungary in the summertime, and on any street corner you might find a young musician, perhaps preparing for the day when he will take the stage in one of her many concert halls. There is art everywhere as well, and for just about $15 American, you too can have a Hungarian artist do your portrait, as our producer, Steve Ulrich, did. Back on on the racetrack at the Hungarian Grand Prix. Here come the leaders over the brow and into what they call a straightaway. It's actually a series of 3 gentle turns. There is Gerhard Berger in the Ferrari, running in 3rd position. Just ahead of him, the yellow helmet of the world champion, Ayrton Senna. Just behind him, Senna's teammate, Alain Prost of France. Pretty tough sandwich to be in that situation.
Extremely tough sandwich to be in. There we see Gerhard Berger as he goes around the corner, leading onto the pit straight. For some reason or other, Alain Prost is losing a bit of ground coming up that corner. As I keep stressing, that's the one place he really wants to be in very close contact. He's very close going to the chicane, but he loses it somewhere else. In fact, he seems to be losing generally now, a little bit. Senna now giving Patrese a really hard time. We don't know what tyre combination any of these guys have got. We were advised by Goodyear that they would probably all start on C's and make a stop, whereas if they ran on the harder compound of B's, they could probably finish the race. But the trouble with that is, of course, you start to go slower near the end. The trouble with the stop syndrome here is that if you stop and drop behind a couple of slower cars, it takes you half the race to get around them again. So it's a bit of a, like we said at the beginning, very, very tactical races. Hard to call it right.
We have very few passes thus far in the Hungarian Grand Prix, but believe me, it is a struggle, and tires could be a question at any moment. As we looked out up and down the pit lane, every pit is ready for a stop. I mean, the mechanics are out there with the tires and wheels. We don't often see it. They'll usually lay their tools aside and let their men do battle on the racetrack for a while, but right now, virtually every pit is prepared for a pit stop.
Now these lead cars, that's Michele Alboreto just in front of them in the Lola Lamborghini, who must be running just about last of the running cars, and he's about to be swept by the leaders. There we see
that's Nigel Mansell. Looking surprisingly alone at this point. He must have dropped Alex Caffey somewhere. Caffey not even in the picture as Mansell makes his way around. I don't see Alex Caffey at all.
Now Alex Caffey would now be holding up Derek Warwick and the rest of them.
Here come your leaders, about to overtake Michele Alboreto. Remember, he's driving with that cracked rib. He took a painkilling injection before the start of the race. And let's see, he's going to move right over and let the leaders come chugging through, but he's got a corner coming up. Will they make it? No, and so Patrese gets the benefit and opens a big gap over Senna as Alboreto closed the door and took the line through the corner.
Well, he tried to let him through, but I mean, when you come to a corner, I mean, the corner's a corner. You can't just suddenly climb off the road.
And so now Ayrton Senna will have about a 2-second gap to make up.
But they've just got to go around. That looks like the other Minardi. Is this the Minardi in front? Patrese, that's
this would be Sala in the Minardi up ahead. Now let's see if Sala will move over and let the leaders come through. There's another look. Berger almost took a shot at Senna as the two passed Alboreto in the Lola.
That's the thing when you come to traffic. You're desperately keen to overtake the guy in front of you. You've got to keep a very, very sharp eye on the mirror as well.
Capelli on the march is off.
He had a crash this morning in practice, and that is already his spare car, so Ivan Capelli needs to be a bit careful with his machinery. He'll be running out of cars.
A lot of folks wondering what's going to happen to the March team next year. The word is that Capelli wants out.
Patrese there. Is he going to? Yeah, Patrese got in there. Now, of course, if Sala shuts the door on Senna, that could...
and he did.
He did.
As Alboreto did before him.
Ooh. Now he's doing it to Gerhard Berger.
Senna known to be a master of traffic situations, but he just can't make anything work here today, it would seem, at the Hungaroring. Patrese, Senna, there goes Berger making his way past Sala, and now Alain Prost will have to do it. 14 cameras around this 2.4-mile circuit. Pictures being provided to us by Hungarian television.
Well, Senna soon made up that gap, which leads you to either that he has made yet again another astounding decision on his tires like he did at Mexico, or that Patrese maybe did not. Gerhard Berger's going very strongly too. We certainly can't count him out of the running. There we see Capelli.
Capelli getting a new set of Goodyears, and it looks like maybe trouble at the left rear wheel hub. And of course the international signal for shucks, we're done.
Yep, so that's another DNF for Capelli, not having the sort of year that we all thought they would. The Leighton House marchers just have not put their act together like they did last year. And even at the beginning of this year, Guzman had a great 4th place in Rio. And they just can't seem to get themselves up onto the camshaft, as it were, and run really strongly all the time.
There is Alain Prost tagging along. He has dropped back off of Gerhard Berger's Ferrari. 62 victories among the top 4 as Michele Alboreto parks here in Hungary. Back at the Formula One Grand Prix of Hungary, there is Nigel Mansell, who is trying desperately to get by Ayrton Senna in the McLaren. Thus far, it has been an absolute standoff.
And in the back of the picture there is Derek Warwick, who's 1 lap down, and right behind him is Gerhard Berger, who wants in the worst possible way to get at that lead group because he is part of it.
The car in the front is a V10, followed by another V10, a 12, a 10, and then Derek driving along in his V8 and maintaining the pace pretty well, holding off Berger's Ferrari V12.
Seems to be holding him off and keeping up with the lead group. Of course, Derek Warwick, like Berger, has been in for a pit stop and put new tyres on, and I'm sure that Patrese and Senna, to a certain extent, even though they're desperately straining to get by each other, are driving a relatively conservative race to make their tyres last to the end. They cannot afford to stop.
Sparks from the back of the Ferrari as Nigel Mansell hits the bump at the bottom of the hill here on the Hungaro ring. 26 laps remaining in this 77-lap event.
I mean, at this point, they've all got to be asking themselves, can I make these tyres last for another 26 laps?
What's the first indication to the driver that they won't?
Well, I mean, the car starts to become unstable on braking and in the corners as the tyres go off. And, of course, once they start to go off, the whole thing is a horribly accelerating decline of the tyre. As it slides around more, it gets hotter, the surface gets more and more mushy, and the whole car's handling just starts to go downhill fast. So you have to really drive it incredibly carefully to stop it sliding, whilst at the same time, of course, you're trying to stop the other guy get by, or you're trying to get by him, or whatever.
Now there is Jonathan Palmer in the Tyrrell letting the traffic get by as they climb the hill toward the pit entrance on the front straightaway. Woo. Whoa, close moment there. That looked like, that was Derek, I think, in the arrows.
Yeah. Jonathan was trying to get into the pits as well. Bit tricky there.
And so the train rolls on. It looks like Senna will now try for the lead, and it looks like he has the line on Riccardo Patrese. And so we have our first pass for the lead here in Hungary. Ayrton Senna taking over from Riccardo Patrese, who led from the green light. And here comes Mansell. Going to try Patrese on the outside? No. Now the inside.
Oh, Patrese must have got a problem. Is that smoke coming out from underneath it?
The drivers say the track is enormously dirty when you're off the line. Might have just been some of the marbles kicked up. But Riccardo Patrese must have a problem. He has slowed considerably. Now he is holding up Alain Prost in third. Here's another look at the pass.
A clean pass. He made a bit of an attempt to stop him, but not too determined.
Now we pick up the action once again, and there is nothing to prevent Nigel Mansell and Ayrton Senna from doing full battle now.
Nigel determined to get around him, and is certainly not losing any ground.
We're watching two men at the top of their game. Ayrton Senna, the winningest driver of the last 2 years in Formula One, and Nigel Mansell, who preceded him in that honor back when Mansell was with the Williams team and they had the Honda engines that in turbo form in those days, now normally aspirated, powering the McLaren of Ayrton Senna. Onto the front straight they come, and the crowd comes to their feet, 300,000 strong, as the McLaren pulls away to a quick 5-car length advantage over the Ferrari, but just as quickly Mansell brings it back in. Patrese swings back and forth across the racetrack. Prost not able to get by him.
And behind them is still Gerhard Berger, stuck behind Derek Warwick. But these two now, of course, Prost is holding up the rest of the gang, or rather Patrese is holding up the rest of the gang. These two put a lot of daylight between themselves and their immediate pursuers, which of course includes our erstwhile race leader, Riccardo Patrese, now being very closely followed by Alain Prost and Gerhard Berger.
12 cars remain on the lead lap here at Hungary. Patrese, Senna, Mansell, Prost. Make that Senna, Patrese, Mansell, Prost, Berger, Cheever, Boutsen, Piquet, Caffey, Pirro, Modena, Alesi. Derek Warwick, first car, 1 lap down, followed by Jonathan Palmer, Luis Sala, Martin Brundle, Stefan Johansson, and they are the only cars still circulating. 26 cars started this race, as they always do Formula One events. 17 cars remain in the Hungarian Grand Prix. A good look there at Nigel Mansell, hard at work in the cockpit of the Ferrari. There is Senna in his trademark yellow helmet.
Both cars On the video here, the tires look okay as far as we can see. Obviously, we can't feel what they can feel, but look at the lead these two have pulled out. Absolutely massive lead they've pulled out in just 3 laps.
We got a quick glimpse there of Alain Prost pulling alongside Riccardo Patrese, who is very slow on the front straightaway. He's at the back of your picture there.
Patrase's engine's gone.
He is barely moving, crawling down the front straight. So now Prost moves up into 3rd place, followed by Gerhard Berger, and there's a good battle there. There is Riccardo Patrese.
Well, he certainly put on a heck of a show for Williams and, of course, for Renault, even though it's the Renault engine that seems to have finally called it day. What a shame for Patrese. There's 2 good races he's had this year. Rio and here, where he's led and shown that the car can do it, but they've just got to get a few rough edges knocked off.
6 years from his last pole, Riccardo Patrese started the parade here in Hungary, but he is now done for the day. Tough break for a fine driver. More top-ranked boxing coming your way here on ESPN Tuesday, the 15th of August at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. 2 hours of fighting from the South Mountain Arena in West Orange, New Jersey. The Gold to Glory double Olympic gold champions, Ray Mercer out of Essex, New Jersey, versus a heavyweight contender for 8 rounds. And we'll have Andrew Maynard, 6-0 with 6 knockouts, boxing out of Laurel, Maryland, in a light heavyweight bout to face Butch Hall, 10-9-1, fighting out of Newark, New Jersey. Coming your way 9 p.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday night, top-ranked boxing here on ESPN. And here in the Hungarian Grand Prix, you watch Nigel Mansell at work in the office. He is on the tailpipes of Ayrton Senna, the world champion, leading for McLaren and coming off a big victory 2 weeks ago in Germany.
But he always gets to turn 1 just that little bit too far in front for Nigel to make an outbraking maneuver, but Nigel immediately catches all that room back up as they swoop through turns 1 and 2 here. He's right with him. And as they go to this very fast right-hander at the bottom of the hill, Nigel's good through there. The car's good, and he makes a lot of ground up this hill, but just not enough to get him on that difficult-to-overtake entry to that left-hand sweeper.
Great battle between 2 great drivers here at the Hungaro Ring. Bob Barsha, David Hobbs, and John Bizignano with you. And from our announce position overlooking the pit straightaway, you should know that Riccardo Patrese has made the long walk back to the Williams garages, and the crowd in these grandstands, I would guess 7,000 or 8,000 people within our purview, have risen and given him a standing ovation.
Well, he certainly deserved it. He's driven brilliantly all weekend, and we're seeing a re-emergence of the old Riccardo Patrese. Since he's been driving the Williams with the Renault engine this year, he's really been turning in some very, very good performances.
Riccardo Patrese, who drove his first Formula One race in 1977 when Alain Prost was racing karts and Ayrton Senna wasn't racing at all. And we've got the 28 of Gerhard Berger now parked by the side of the road. Berger was running a tight 4th position, and he is now stopped and out of the car.
That's 10 out of 10.
10 straight DNFs for Gerhard Berger, and there you see him making his way to the stand. He is by far, I think, the favorite driver here in Hungary. He comes from neighboring Austria, and there are signs hanging over every fence around this Hungary. Whoa! Very close moment there behind the Onyx. And as a result, Senna has balked, and Nigel Mansell has made his way by into the lead.
Now, what a piece of opportunistic overtaking that was. Nigel, now that takes some bravery, because when you're coming up to slow traffic like that, the natural inclination is always to lift off a little bit, and you can see it developing here. Coming on that car, he's just balked, he moves over, but Nigel just takes the bull by the horns and moves right over there and whistles by them both.
And closes the door on Senna very quickly as well. Gets back over onto the racing line to prevent Senna from responding. A problem there in the Onyx of Stefan Johansson, perhaps missed shift at the bottom of the hill. And an opportunity for Nigel Mansell, who quickly opens up about a 6-car length advantage over Ayrton Senna, who I suspect is probably sitting there waiting for his heart rate to slow a little bit.
I bet he is. I think Nigel's is not exactly ticking over at the moment either.
So our 3rd leader is Nigel Mansell. There is Senna. There is Mansell to the left of your screen. And once again, the crowd comes to its feet.
Ferrari, of course, the world's favorite car when it comes to racing in Formula One. They just something about the name. Here we see a replay of it again. He just gets boxed in, but not very much. I mean, it wasn't as if he hung around there. He made a move to get around him. Senna I'm talking about now, but Nigel just flat dusted them both off there. Very, very gutsy piece of driving indeed.
McLaren going for their 78th victory in Formula One competition, but out ahead is Ferrari with 95. McLaren might soon overtake Lotus's total of 79 GP wins. But right now, Nigel Mansell, who won in his debut for the Ferrari team at Rio earlier this year, is looking for victory number 2 of the year, 15 of his career, if he can hold on with 19 laps to go here at the Hungaroring.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see how these two guys, how their tires stand up now. I mean, they're driving very, very hard, and everybody was assuming that everybody was going to have to make at least one tire stop. And they're both going at it absolutely hammer and tongs. It's going to be interesting to see if they can maintain this to the end.
Let's get down to John in the pits.
Bob, Riccardo Patrese came by our position. I asked him if we could talk to him. He said, no, thank you. He looked absolutely ill. Remember, at the beginning of this program, we mentioned how physical, how demanding this track is on the drivers, and Riccardo Patrese is absolutely knackered. But it was the Renault engine. Wanting to confirm to you, the Renault engine is what caused Riccardo Patrese DNF here in Hungary.
Tough break for Riccardo Patrese. But there will be other days for that Williams-Renault team. Now in their 20th season of Formula One racing, Team Williams took them something like 10 years to win their first GP, and they may be the winningest Grand Prix team. Oh, and a spin for one of the Minardis.
Is that Sala?
It must be Sala. Martini, I believe, is out of the race. Sala, who was running in 12th position, a lap down to the leaders, loops it
right in front of the leaders. Not a good spot to go looping the old model, as Ayrton Senna not losing any ground at all to Nigel Mansell. Now, this is going to be an extremely tactical bit of racing going on here. A lot of figuring out what's going to do what and who's going to do what to whom and when and how.
And we'll find out when we return to the Hungaroring. Nigel Mansell is your leader, followed by Senna, Prost, Cheever in 4th, Boutsen, and Nelson Piquet in the 6th and final points-paying position. With a massive crowd on hand watching a great Hungarian Grand Prix. There is Ayrton Senna, who led for just a few laps late in this race before being passed by Nigel Mansell, the present leader. The gap between them, 2.4 seconds last time around. There is Alain Prost, who stopped for tires and has now reset fast lap as he tries desperately to reel in the leaders, who have not stopped for new tires.
Well, as far as tactical moves go, I mean, obviously the car is now extremely fast, not nearly a second off the previous fastest lap, which was Gerhard Berger. Of course, the car's light, not so much gas on board now. On the other hand, with only 7 laps left or whatever it is, it's kind of cutting it fine to try and draw back 20 seconds.
Well, if anyone can do it,
12 laps to go.
Prost might well be the man. 12 laps remaining. There in his traditional yellow helmet is the Brazilian world champion, Ayrton Senna. Eddie Cheever has now been passed by Terry Boutsen as we watch Nigel Mansell making his way around on the lead. Boutsen has passed Eddie Cheever to retake 3rd position. So make your points positions: Mansell, Senna, Boutsen, Cheever, Prost, and Nelson Piquet, who has done a quietly workmanlike job of driving as well. Piquet qualified in the 17th spot, and he has now made his way up into 6th.
And Alain Prost sets yet another fastest lap, 1 minute 22.6 and some change. Fairly flying along. A 1:22 would have qualified him right in the middle of the pack. So a very good lap at this time of the race. There we see Ayrton Senna, who led for a little bit. Not so far behind Nigel Mansell. He dropped back about 2.5 seconds.
2.3 by my watch, David.
2.3 seconds, but he seems to be holding it there. Doesn't seem to be dropping back anymore. They're showing still 1.5 on there, but as we time it ourselves, we know they're wrong.
Absolutely. I'll take my time over a Longines. No, I better not say.
Nigel Mansell has now set the fastest lap of the race. So Nigel is obviously not in any trouble with tyres at all. And if he can still do 22s at this stage, Alain Prost has no chance of catching up with him.
That is extraordinary. Now, the McLaren and Ferrari teams are both set up for a pit stop, but I've got to believe at this point it would be an extraordinary circumstance that would drive them to the pits now.
Well, if he can still do 22s, there's obviously nothing wrong with his tyres. The reason they'll be set up is in case they have just a straightforward puncture or something like that, but otherwise there's no way he'll stop. If he can do 22s, his tyres are fine.
There is Nelson Piquet coming down the front straightaway, not looking especially fast at this point. Although
he never does look fast. He hits something. Suddenly looks horribly fast then.
PK still running in 6th position. There is your leader, Nigel Mansell. Onto the front straightaway one more time. There is the gap back to 2nd position, and Ayrton Senna. Two men who had plenty of comings together just a few years ago when Senna was driving for the Lotus team and Mansell was driving for Williams. It seemed like every other race, Senna and Mansell were getting into each other on some track around the world.
Well, that's absolutely true. With 10 laps to go, Alan Prost is 10 seconds behind Eddie Cheever, and or 10 seconds behind Thierry Boutsen, actually. So he's managed to catch up from 17 to 10 in just 3 laps. But Boutsen, of course, is 28 seconds behind Senna, so there's no chance of catching the 2 leaders up, I would think.
A long time ago, the McLaren team owner, Ron Dennis, said that if there was one team in Formula One that could catch the dominant McLarens, it would be Ferrari. The Fiat company, the Italian car-building giant that owns the Ferrari team, has the resources, meaning dollars, in Dennis's estimation, properly marshaled to catch the McLaren. Of course, giving the impression at the time that they weren't being properly marshaled. Now Cesare Fiorio, who ran the extremely successful Lancia rally program in World Rally Competition, has taken over the Ferrari team, and suddenly Ferrari is looking very, very good once again.
Well, there's no doubt about it that people make an awful lot of fuss about the Honda involvement with McLaren. Obviously, the Honda engine has proved to be the class of the field for the last 4 years, really. The last 2 years of turbo were absolutely untouchable. Incredibly reliable, very, very fuel efficient, and obviously lots of horsepower. But it's ridiculous that people like Ford and Fiat are vastly bigger companies than Honda. And if they felt like, as you said, correctly marshalling their forces and applying their funds in the correct way, they should be able to eat Honda alive for breakfast, really.
Interesting relationship between the engine builders and the teams that build the cars. Each car a work of art, a designer's dream, built from scratch. And interesting that under Formula One rules, there are very few strictures put on the designers other than width and height and safety regulations and so forth. And yet they come up with 25 and 30 cars that qualify within an eye blink of one another using 6 and 8 different kinds of engines. Plenty of racing still to come as you watch this dice, which includes both of the USF&G Arrows cars. Eddie Cheever running in 4th position. We'll return to Hungary. Here on ESPN Speed World, the Grand Prix of Belgium from the amazing Spa-Francorchamps course. You want to see wide open speed and a tremendously exciting racetrack that is part public road. Watch the Grand Prix of Belgium coming your way here on ESPN 2 weeks from now, Sunday, August 27th, 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific time.
There we see Alan Prost, who's just dusted off the 2 Brabhams, which are languishing rather a long way down. Brundle's 2 laps down. Modern is only 1 lap down, and he's pulled away from them, and now he's catching up with the dynamic duo of Eddie and Derek Warwick in the 2 USF&G Arrows. Of course, Warwick is a lap down, but Eddie, of course, is racing for that vital 4th spot, so he won't want to let Alan Prost by it particularly easy, but I suspect that he's going to have to.
There goes Nigel Mansell diving down into the first turn.
With a very big lead now.
Very substantial lead. We'll wait for our Longines timer to tell us how much it is. In excess of 7 or 8 seconds would be my guess. So Ayrton Senna must be beginning to have tire problems with that McLaren and is backing off a little bit because he has left Nigel Mansell well clear in the lead.
Well, there's no doubt that Nigel timed everything to absolute perfection here. He's nursed his tires all through this race, and here we are right in the closing stages of it. He's able to maintain a tremendously strong pace. There you see him lock up the right front. Could be a sign that his tires are going off just a little bit, but his lap times aren't generally showing that.
Good look there at Alex Caffey. John has a comment from the pit lane.
Well, Bob and David, about the tire situation, Alan Prost came in and he went from the Bs that he started the race on to a very soft C compound, and that's what allowing him to go so quickly now with people who have tired tires. Boutsen's the only one out there who has changed tires along with Prost. The Goodyear people said that Prost would have been able to go the distance on the Bs. There was enough tread, but there wasn't enough grip. So he is on some very soft Cs now, just streaking by everyone.
Well, he's going to run out of time, it would appear. We have about 6 laps remaining. Prost presently runs in the 5th spot, 2 seconds behind Eddie Cheever. And I I would imagine he might catch Eddie within the next lap or two, but Nigel Mansell now 10 seconds clear of Ayrton Senna in second. Terry Boutsen 27 further seconds in a rear in third, followed by Cheever 8 seconds behind Boutsen. Prost 2 seconds behind Cheever. Nelson Piquet in the 6th and final points paying position, 18 seconds down to Prost.
So Prost has have no hope here of catching up with the leaders, unless, of course, Nigel has to stop and change, but it certainly doesn't look like it.
Should he hold on, this will be career victory number 15 for Nigel Mansell, his second of the year, and with it he will pick up the 9 points for first place, which will move him closer to Ayrton Senna, presently in second position on the points table, to his teammate Alain Prost. 6 points for second, 4 points for third, 3, 2, and 1 for fourth, fifth, and sixth position.
There we see Emmanuel Pirot in the second of the Benetton Ford V8 engine cars. A lot of discussion going now whether 8 cylinders is going to be enough to take on the might of the Honda V10. A rumored Honda V12 coming next year. The Ferrari V12 is obviously giving an awful lot of power as well. And everybody's saying that 10 is an absolute minimum. And John Judd is supposedly working on a new V10 engine for the Leighton House team.
And we're also hearing rumors that the folks who made the extremely successful Chevy Ilmore engine for Indianapolis car use on the kart series in the United States may have something up their sleeve in a 3.5-liter engine for Formula One as well.
Well, I saw Mario Elin at the British Grand Prix. He was stalking the paddock. Obviously, he's very interested in the Formula One scene, and I'm sure he'd like to do it as long as somebody comes up with enough bucks to pay him to do it. But it'll be a very, very expensive job to develop a car, an engine for this formula to try and take on the might of Ferrari and Honda.
Porsche says they have a 12-cylinder engine ready for Formula One use if someone will just come up with the $45 million that they'll need to develop it. And a lot of teams have been associated with that little nest egg, but obviously a tremendous sponsor input is going to have to come with it before we'll see Porsche back in Formula One. There is Nigel Mansell making his way around now with a 12-second lead over Ayrton Senna. Boutsen 25 seconds further back. Eddie Cheever right now in fourth. Alain Prost not yet by him in fifth position. Sixth is Nelson Piquet. Seventh is Alex Caffey. He is the only remaining car on the lead lap. Manuel Pirot is 1 lap down, as is Gene Alesi, Derek Warwick, Stefano Modena, Martin Brundle 2 laps down, Jonathan Palmer 4 laps down. The Hungaroring with 4 laps remaining. You're watching your leader, Nigel Mansell, who will have this crowd of some 300,000 Formula One fans absolutely ecstatic if he can hold on and win for Ferrari.
There you see Eddie Cheever being hounded by Alain Prost. And this, of course, is for 4th position, which Eddie would dearly love to hang on to, having come up from the field from his qualifying position where he qualified in 16th.
Eddie Cheever told us before the race, keep an eye on my number 10. I think I've got this puppy dialed in, and he has driven exceptionally well, in position to pick up a few more of those valuable Formula One World Championship points. Cheever presently is tied for 11th in the table with 4 points thus far this year, so he can make a big jump if he can pick up possibly 3rd place points, which would be 4, or 4th place points if he gets passed by the McLaren, which would give him 3, and that would move him up into as high as 8th or even 7th position on the points table.
And there seems to be a bit of a status quo here. Prost does not seem to be making a tremendous amount of ground on Eddie.
Derek Warwick in the other USF&G Arrows is bringing up the rear in this 3-car train. Prost is on softer tires, and even at this short distance, I wouldn't think he would be able to run them off at this point. One would think, if he has a healthy McLaren, that he should just run down and pass Eddie's V8 Arrows easily.
You would certainly expect him to, I must say.
So I wonder if he does have a healthy car. Recall just with a couple of laps to go in Germany 2 weeks ago, and Alain Prost could not get into 6th gear. Was passed by teammate Ayrton Senna for the victory after leading virtually the entire distance.
Well, of course, it could be that Ayrton Senna's maybe having some gearbox troubles today, the way Nigel Mansell's driving away from him. But again, we just don't know what tires these guys chose. If Nigel put C's on that car, the softer compound Goodyear, at the beginning of this race, and is still driving at this speed now, obviously everybody would be...
There is the pit board signaling Nigel Mansell. 2 laps to go and the gap back to his nearest pursuers. I imagine there's probably a little bit of a smile underneath The fireproof balaclava being worn by Nigel Mansell.
I imagine there's quite a bit of a smile under there. The Ferrari is no doubt about it. The Ferrari is very competitive this year. They got off to a slightly rocky start with the gear selection troubles that they had. They seem to put those behind them now. But Gerhard Berger just has the most awful luck with his car. There's some of it self-inflicted, as you know, we saw 2 weeks ago at Hockenheim when he bent the rim by bouncing all over the curbs. But then Nigel was doing that as well, and he didn't bend his rim, so that was just a bit of the way it fell, I felt. Alan Prost still stuck behind Eddie Cheever, not really making any ground on him at all. Ooh, made a bit of ground going into that corner there.
There's Nigel Mansell, whose last 3 finishes on the Formula One circuit have been a second, and a third. So if he can come through with a victory today, Nigel Mansell will be on one serious roll. When he comes around, he will have 1 lap remaining, I do believe.
Into the last corner.
Down the straightaway he comes. Nigel Mansell, who's now owner of a Ferrari dealership on the Isle of Man. We have a quick comment from John Bizignano in the pit.
We have been able to confirm that Nigel Mansell started this race on the softer C compounds. His chassis has been working extremely well, and he's been driving very smoothly to keep those C's alive throughout the entire race.
He has done precisely that, and now Nigel Mansell is on his last lap. He has driven beautifully here in Hungary on a difficult racetrack. He has conserved his tires and his machine. He has been opportunistic in 2 circumstances, very close moments, taking the lead when he and Ayrton Senna and Stefan Johansson could have wound up in a little pile of race cars by the side of the track.
They certainly could. It was a brilliant piece of overtaking. He just judged it to an absolute perfection. Senna got himself boxed in, which is very unlike Ayrton Senna, but he paid the penalty, and Nigel's shot away, and having got round him, has managed to put an incredible amount of time between himself and Senna.
Mansell also avoided a spinning Minardi late in the race, and the crowd of 300,000 now comes to its feet, and the red flags of Ferrari with their checkered borders are being waved throughout the grandstands to welcome home Englishman Nigel Mansell with his 15th career Formula One victory, and a very emotional triumph for the Ferrari team here at Hungary. Second place, there is Ayrton Senna, 19 seconds in arrears.
Senna has yet to show there. There we see Senna coming up to the pit entry, to the last corner, going visibly slower now too. Slowed down a lot.
Knowing he has that position fairly solidly, Senna second, Terry Boutsen in third. Eddie Cheever, it appears, will hold off Alain Prost and take 3rd place points. That will make the folks in the USF&G pit very happy indeed, as well as a few folks back in Phoenix, where Eddie was born. There is Terry Boutsen coming down across the start-finish line for 3rd position. Cheever 4th, Alain Prost 5th. No, Alain Prost made the pass, so just as I'm ready to give Eddie the position, Prost did get by him. It wasn't reflected on our leaderboard. Make 4th place, Alain Prost, and that means that the points gap between Prost, who leads, and teammate Ayrton Senna, who is pursuing, will come down by a few. There is Nelson Piquet, who's had a quiet drive to 6th position in this Hungarian Grand Prix.
Picking himself up 1 point in the process. Of course, he had a good race 2 weeks ago at Hungary, and an extremely good race in Britain just 2 weeks before that. The Lotus Piquet combinations really come to life in the last 6 or so weeks.
And Piquet is a former 2-time winner of this Hungarian Grand Prix. Nice drive today. We'll be back with final thoughts from the Formula One Grand Prix of Hungary after this. Continues on the Hungaroring, one of what may be several tracks built behind the Iron Curtain to welcome that most capitalistic of all sports, Formula One racing. ESPN Speed World coverage of the Formula One Grand Prix of Hungary has been brought to you by USF&G. Here are the final results of today's Grand Prix of Hungary. Nigel Mansell, the winner for Ferrari, followed by Ayrton Senna, Terry Boutsen, Alain Prost, Eddie Cheever in 5th position, and Nelson Piquet 6th. Here are the way the seasonal points stand. Prost the leader with 56 over Senna with 42, followed by Nigel Mansell, Riccardo Patrese, and Terry Boutsen. Our manufacturer's points show McLaren well in front with 98 points over Williams, Ferrari, Benetton, Lotus, and Tyrrell. Our pick 6 today, David, the big winner. He correctly put Alain Prost in the 4th position, earning him 2 points. 1 more for Ayrton Senna and for Nigel Mansell. 4 points for David, 3 for Bob, and 3 for John. David, your final thoughts on today's event?
Well, I think we had a real race at last, which certainly augurs well for the rest of the series. But, boy, you really have to feel desperately sorry for Riccardo Patrese, who's dropped out twice now while leading handily in races in 1989. And, of course, you have to feel terribly sorry for Gerhard Berger, who's now on 10 out of 10 DNS for the season. Very disappointing, but some good racing to come.
I agree with all of that. Let's go down to the pits now, and John Bizignano.
John Barnard, welcome to Victory Circle. How's it feel?
I haven't completely forgotten it. Feels good.
Car ran very well, very strong down the straightaways. Can Ferrari run with the Hondas only at slow circuits like this, or are you ready to go racing everywhere?
No, I think, you know, if you're watching a lot of the corners, they've still got the edge on acceleration, and I'm still optimistic about some of the circuits to come this year. Spain, Portugal, Adelaide. I still think we can do a good job there.
Well, John, we're looking for a good Ferrari job being done at all those circuits. John Barnard, the winning technical director of Ferrari.